Three, four, five, six.
Very, very good evening to everybody, and it's Candid Conversations from Lockdown Time with myself, Aidan, brought to you by Kyalami Question. And we're very happy to introduce another sponsor to you that's come on board, and that is Mumpro SA and I4 Williams Horse Boxes. Great to have you guys as part of the team here. Well, our guests this evening, there are two of them, formerly based in South Africa, then they made the move to Europe, and now they have once again moved to another part of the world, and that is Wellington in Florida. Very good evening. Well, it's a good evening here in South Africa because it's Thursday night, just gone 8 o'clock, but for you guys, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. How are you, Roxy and Johan?
We're very good, thank you, Aidan.
Very well, thank you.
Excellent.
So, typical on a summer afternoon.
Yes, you say it's raining there. Big storm coming.
Well, just about every afternoon at 2 o'clock, you can count on it. It's going to happen.
Ah, like the old Joburg summers. We love that. You get the thunderstorms as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Lightning's not as bad, but...
Brilliant. Rox, I'm going to chat to you first, and then we'll go into Tokkie's story. You have qualified how long ago as a vet, and where did you do your training? Scotland, I believe.
We lost you. Oh, we lost you.
Oh, I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I was saying you've qualified as a vet. You did your training in Scotland. How long ago was that?
So I moved to Scotland in 2013. I did 5 years there, and I graduated 2 years ago now from the University of Glasgow, and kind of been working since. And
in what field? Horses primarily?
Yeah, so I graduated as a general veterinary surgeon, so all species, but all my practical time I spent working with sport vets and different horse vets. So afterwards I went and I worked in a big clinic in Germany, as well as a performance vet at the same time. I did part-time. And now we're in the States, so I'm still just working with horses, and I'm busy at the moment doing a master's in animal nutrition back through the University of Glasgow.
You touched there, there's this movement, and I think South Africa's, we're getting there, but we're a little bit behind the curve in preventative sports medicine with regards to our horses. It's always been a case, well, you go along, when something goes wrong, you patch them up, you get them better, you move along. It's now changing. It's now identify the problems before they happen. Tell us more.
Well, that would be the idea. It's pretty hard to do, because where do you draw the line, you know? I mean, theoretically, every horse could get anything, and preventative means, I think, having an idea of the risk factors of your particular horse. I think throwing the kitchen sink at a horse in terms of injecting every joint just in case they might get sore, I think that's what you've got to be careful with sports medicine. So preemptive is maybe the word rather than preventative, because you can't prevent everything. So if you have an idea of kind of what your risk factors are, then you have a better idea of kind of how to prevent them as such. I think South Africa may be behind as you think, but in a way I find America behind, because for them preventative means literally spend a lot of money on treatments that may or may not work and the horse may or may not need. Whereas I feel like in South Africa, people have a very good idea of what they're feeling in their horses. So I don't think they're that far behind. And as I said, prevention doesn't always mean trying everything just in case the horse might get it.
When it comes to show jumping, what are some of the most common ailments that you find, the wear and tear that most affects the jumpers?
I think that's also depending where you are in the world. Here, at least, a lot of people have they blame the footing a lot. So you'll get typically a lot of horses with sore feet, so they'll inject coffin joints a lot, things like that. My opinion is also in Europe, the horses, as I say, my opinion, tend to be better shod too. So I think there's a big kind of environmental and management component to the wear and tear as well. What you see a lot here is yeah, I would say tons of sore feet, coffin joints. And then a lot of people are still working at necks, a lot of work with the necks, a lot of work with backs still, but kind of all round. I tend to see not so many kind of tendon injuries here. I would say I've heard of and seen more in South Africa. Here it tends to be just real concussion and real overuse injuries more than kind of wear and tear. It's massive just bombardment of the horses. They use them a lot.
Do environmental issues, environmental conditions come into that? The kind of going that we're jumping on? We see a lot of fiber arenas in South Africa these days. Is that not so much the case in the US? Is that why you seeing different ailments? And does that play a part, the different conditions, and how we condition our horses to the different conditions, or lack thereof maybe?
I find, I mean, fiber tends to be worldwide now. They've kind of standardized arenas. I do find that Europe tends to still have a bit more sand mixed in with their fiber, which we personally like. I think sometimes with the synthetic, it takes a lot of real maintenance and knowledge of the maintenance. So footing does get a blame here, but if you jump your horse on any footing excessively, I think they'll start to break down too. I think South Africa is very good with conditioning the horses. The training is very good. Horses are fit and not overused. Here, there's just so many shows, so many competitions. The horses jump a lot, really a lot.
Are more things, I'm trying to be politically correct, but by things I mean types of drugs coming into the market for preventative use, suppositories, anti-inflammatories, things that we didn't have 20 years ago, and are they beneficial?
Yes, I think you've got to keep up with the world and the sport, and there's always going to be people trying to develop new things, and I think that's good because the efficacy of a lot of what's available, it's licensed, doesn't always mean it's effective, and other things may be effective but they don't have a license, so we can't theoretically use them firsthand. So we've got to try to figure out what's going to work and what people are just trying to sell. And that's a tough one because it's such a big marketing thing and who you can sponsor and who kind of endorses your products. So there's a definite need for things, and the US is quite good with their studies of efficacy, and there's been a few sport vets that have done studies and have been very disappointed with products that they've used for years that we thought were making a big difference, and kind of on a statistic level it hasn't. So
are you allowed to tell me what those are?
Well, not trade names, but things that we use a lot, like certain hyaluronic acids or compounds that are similar to cartilaginous makeup and matrix makeup and things like that. So nothing radical, just what we've kind of, all the polyglycan kind of things that we've been using.
Are you talking specifically about the ones that you put in the feed that are oral powders and things?
No, so these would be ones that would be injected intra-articularly, so into the joint, or intravenously, so into the vein. The jury's really out on oral absorption of products, so I won't get into that at all. But there's definitely scope for regenerative medicine, things like autologous things where they take blood from the body and make things you would know it as IRAP or PRP. They're trying to do stem cells, those kind of things. So there's a lot of work being done on it. And I think it just, most vets, in my opinion, that I see here, it's kind of if they think something works, they'll use it. Because there's a lot available here.
Now, you do come back to South Africa quite often, not as a vet. You don't have a license to practice here, and I know that you're very, very strict about that, about adhering to those regulations. But you were involved in a company, or you may still be involved in a company called Cell Scout. You were telling me off air that the name has changed, that it has advanced. But before we get into that, I'm very much a man of science. I love the data and the science of things. I'm very put off by perceived quackery and lotions and potions. And I would imagine that being a vet, you are very much the same type of brain. That said, I don't think stumbled is the right word, but you were having health problems at one stage in your life, couldn't find an answer, and this is what brought you to Cell Scout. Tell me the story about that and how it helped you, and then how you implicated or moved into the horsey diagnostics with regard to Cell Scout.
Yes, so growing up, my mom was always big on nutrition, and she did nutrition courses and things like that. And we grew up with if not a knowledge, a very good awareness of nutrition and dietetics and things like that. So I've always had a particular interest in nutrition, basically on all levels. And especially growing up, I've always been fascinated with horses and how they work. So I learned a lot of that, obviously, at vet school, how to deal with the horse and find out what's wrong with them. But I've just always yearned to learn a bit more about how the gut works and how things work on a cellular level. In terms of my own health, I've always been pretty well, but for such an active, supposedly well person, I had derangements in my blood in terms of being diabetic, pre-diabetic and things like that. So I've just always been looking for something that could be scientific, evidence-based, but maybe be a bit more than just pharmaceutical drugs to help me. So I came across a woman in Germany at Aachen show, and they own a big company in Germany that does what they call MediNutrix. So basically it's really high quality nutritional supplements, and they were looking for a way to kind of target how people use them, because a lot of times you'll have a blood test and there's not much to show for it. So they started using a technique or technology called basically bioresonance, and this is where Cell Scout comes from. It was a way of trying to find out cellular derangements that weren't apparent on normal diagnostics. So it's by no means a medical diagnosis or things like that. They were just using it as a kind of tool to guide more micronutritional needs. So I was very skeptical, as you can well imagine. But over years of using things and trying things, I do now tend to use the bioresonance to help me as a tool to guide kind of nutritional supplementation needs and work out what kind of micronutrients I could use to help particular problems. So Cell Scout is now itself very big in Europe in terms of health and wellness, the fitness faction, so sports and wellness. And then what we do to try to keep it more evidence-based and scientific is we call it non-invasive cell analysis. And it's used as a screening for medical doctors and veterinarians to kind of help us direct our diagnosis, because animals can't speak. Something comes in lethargic or losing weight, where do you start? So we use it just to help guide what to do next. And then I use it a lot in terms of helping me at a cellular level with micronutrition.
And you've had wonderful results off of this technology. I'm now a believer. You've helped one of my horses, incredibly different horse, where we couldn't find out what was wrong with him. You put the machine on him. Just very quickly, how does the machine work? Who developed it? I remember when you first came and saw me, you were telling me it was developed by Russian cosmonauts or something.
Yeah, so we don't know exactly too much, because most of the development and stuff has been in Eastern Europe and in the Soviet Union, as I don't even know what it's called now. But basically, you've got to be very careful with things like this, because there is a lot of scientific evidence on the physics behind it. But what often happens, as with everything, is people get hold of it and try and make money. So anything available like this is people kind of claiming to find things that are controversial, such as cancer, and treat things using this energy of cells, this physics, which there's no evidence for that in medical journals and things like that. So I'm very wary of saying, using this technology. So yeah, I guess you've just got to be very careful and use it as a tool, and it doesn't change how I approach a case. As I said, it's a tool, and it's alternative, and I do hope that more work will be done on it to make it more evidence-based. But as I said, it doesn't change kind of my thought process and how I approach why this horse might be, losing weight or anything like that. So as I said, it's with a pinch of salt as a tool.
And you are licensed. You can come out when you come to South Africa and promote this side of your business. Yeah,
so it's a bit of a shame, really, because when I went overseas, I had studied at Pretoria, at the University of Technology, and at Tux. And at that stage, when I went over, my degree in Scotland would be perfectly fine to be licensed. And then in 2015, they made a change that said all medical personnel and veterinarians have to do a year of full-time compulsory community service in order to be licensed, which I didn't know about. So after graduating, I applied to the South African Vet Council, and they gave me the forms, and they said, sure, let us know where you'd like to do your year of community service. And that was the first I'd heard of it. So it's for that reason alone that I can't be a fully licensed veterinarian in South Africa. And as I said, it's a shame, but it's the law. So that's one of those things. So what I do is, as a nutritional consultant and as a South African citizen, there's no problem with me kind of consulting on nutrition and things like that. Obviously, I would like to be fully licensed, and I may apply for exemption. There is a caveat in it with a kind of competence-specific registration that I can maybe do. I don't need it right now, but I wouldn't mind having licensure. I'm licensed in the UK, in Germany. I've written the board exam for America, so it would just be nice to have South Africa in my repertoire as well.
Well, we look forward to seeing when you are out here once again, and I'm sure many people will be getting a hold of you to have come and throw an eye or a cell scout machine, a diagnostic tool over their horses if they can't get down to the bottom of something. Just in terms of your riding, do you get much time to ride over there?
I do. Here I do. I had to take quite a big back seat when I was studying, and I was lucky enough to have a horse from Talks that he had rescued, and I kind of took him over in Scotland. So he has managed to travel the world, and he's with us now. So really back in it now, and I'm getting to ride some of Talks' horses. So hopefully I'll be back in the higher grades in the next couple of years.
Wonderful, wonderful. Right, we're going to turn our attention over to Tokkie now, and you know, as is the formula that we go through in these chats, everybody's story is different. Might be the same questions, but the answers are always different. So we want to find out a little bit more about you, what makes you tick, and before we get into that, a little bit about your background, how you got into horses, and your whole journey through your junior and your children's careers with horses in South Africa until such time as you took the leap to go over to Europe.
Wow, how long do we have?
Yeah, we got time. We got time.
Good. So I guess let's start right back in the beginning in Botswana. So I actually was born in Bulawayo in Zimbabwe, and we lived in a small town in the east of Botswana called Francistown. And at that stage, I can't even remember the age, we got involved with horses through my mother. She'd had horses her whole life. And we started with ponies and doing gymkhanas in Zimbabwe and the odd little shows that they had in Botswana. Then at the age of about 9, we moved to boarding school to Johannesburg, and we continued with our riding, and we did the pony grades, which I don't really want to talk much about, as I had a rough time. And then we moved on into the junior ranks, and there things turned a lot better for me. I assume it was that I'd gotten onto I'd learned a lot from the ponies, and then had taken that onto the horses that I'd gotten. Was very fortunate to get the horses, such as probably my best horse as a 13-year-old was a horse called Wings of Love, and he immediately was very successful at JA level at the time. And then I proceeded to acquire a horse called Free Air from Cape Town, who was also a very good horse. And he then went on with other riders, Leon Boshoff, and was also very successful amongst other horses. And then at 16, I started to ride in the adult ranks, and I again acquired another chestnut called Asta, who was a fantastic horse for me. I jumped my first World Cups and SA Championships and things like that, and we had a very good time. And at the age of 18 or 19, I actually stopped riding, and Asta went on to Barry Taylor, where he did very well as well. I believe he won Western Province Championships and various other meter 50 competitions. And at that stage, I'd gotten into golf, and I pursued a career in golf. I should say career. I first had to go to university and improve my level of golf, which I did for 4 years.
Wait. You went to university to improve your level of golf. How does that make any sense? You normally go to university to improve your academics, not your golf.
Well, academics weren't a big thing for me at school, and I needed the golf to get in for the academic side, and vice versa. And my focus was golf, but I was going ahead and doing a business degree as well. So at the end of 4 years, I ended up with a Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration. And I got to the point where I looked and faced reality and said I wasn't good enough to go and be a pro golfer. And I put my...
So you got the academics, but the handicap wasn't there. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah. So I started working, and I studied in the US. So I didn't mention that. So I did my 4 years here, and then I went on to
Where
work.
exactly?
Actually, not far from Wellington, here, about 2.5 hours north, near Orlando. Okay. So after university, I started working in Miami at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel Group. So that was part of a 1-year optional practical training that we were granted to work in the US after graduating. So I took advantage of that, and consequently, I was transferred to the flagship hotel in Hong Kong, and I worked there for 2.5 years in the Mandarin Oriental there, and then I got transferred to do the opening of the hotel in Boston. So I went back to the US, and I did that for nearly a year. And then at that point, long story short, I decided that the hotel business was not for me long term, and I came back to South Africa. That was 2009, I think.
So
and
during all those years, those studying years, the golfing years, the Hong Kong, Boston, you never sat on a horse. Horses were far from your mind.
That's true. That's true. I can't recall. I think there might have been a time where I might have just sat on a horse for somebody, or gone for an outride. I can't remember, but certainly there was nothing sort of intensive with the horses during that time.
And that was a period of what, 6-7 years must have been?
No, 10 years, 9-10 years.
10 years.
Yeah. Anyway, so I got back to South Africa and started a small business called Divine Proportions, and that was basically in skincare and so forth. And I then slowly got back into the horses and bought a horse from Henning Pretorius, a 4-year-old. And then soon after that, another one. And before I knew it, I had 3 horses again. And the passion, or the bug, I should say, had bitten again. And it was full steam ahead from there. And we had a really good time for a few years until 2013. I rode a lot of Henning's horses, and I had several that I'd brought in from Europe. And so at the end of 2013, I had the opportunity to go to Europe and pursue a career in horse business.
Hang on to that thought, because there's a few questions. First of all, in your juniors, who was helping you? Who was coaching you? So I'm very quick.
Okay. Oh, wow. So I've trained with a lot of people, and I've been very fortunate to do that. So just in children's, I was with Pat van Reenen at Carlswood Club. And then through the juniors, I trained with Sean Henderson for a short while. Gonda also helped me for a short while. Bryce McCall, and Denton Sander. For the most part, during my junior career, it was, I'd say, Denton. And then as I moved into the adult ranks, then I joined Barry Taylor. And since then, I'd always trained with Barry.
And you had a huge amount of success as a junior, I remember.
Yes. I had some good horses, and Wings of Love, unfortunately, he passed away only about 7 months after I'd started riding him. But in our first year at Junior SA Champs, there were two divisions. And in the lower JA classes, he won all 4 classes there. And that was our first show jumping JAs, actually. So we were really looking forward to the new year. That was in December, obviously. But unfortunately, during those holidays, he passed away with a colic. And then I acquired Free Air, who actually had quite a colorful history of being a naughty horse that often wouldn't go in the ring or wouldn't go past the gate, things like that. And we worked out a recipe with him, and he was amazing. I think he was, for 2 years in a row, the best on points, best junior horse in the country.
What was the recipe?
Lots of outrights, no schooling, and one jump
Sounds like
session.
my kind of recipe.
Yeah, one jump session before the show. And after 5 or 6 jumps at home, that would be enough for him. He'd let you know. And the other thing was not to put your hand down at the base of the jump.
Yeah, yeah. We're able to have
Remember that one.
Now, in adults, you were also very, very successful, and you partnered up with Shiraz for a long time?
Yes, yep. So I had, again, fortunately, a really, really good group of horses by the time sort of 2013 came around. I'd taken on, I had a grey mare, which I'd bought in Germany and brought back, was then bought by Henning, called Look at Me. And she was a very successful horse and a good horse. And I had Castigo, a stallion, also of Henning's. And those horses I had prior to partnering with Shiraz. And yes, it wasn't a long partnership, I'd say. I think we sort of started in February of 2013 at shows in the 120s. And in June, I think we had our first real success at the World Cup qualifier in Shongweni, which we won. And yeah, multiple, he jumped, I think he was third. Yes, he was third overall in the World Cup league for South Africa, and jumped a lot of very good rounds. So we were fortunate to do that together.
Some of your big successes, you've mentioned that World Cup win. Was there just the one in the World Cup? Some of your other successes before you decided to leave us and go to Europe?
Yeah, you know, I think I was third in the World Cup in Cape Town, which was a real tough one. There was, I think, Sean was first and second. I think he was Cleon one, and then a time fault on another horse, or 2 horses were clear, and I had the time fault. Sorry, I know I had a time fault, that's for sure. And that for me was a big success. It was a tough track on really light equipment that was imported from Europe, and a really strong field. And more than that, we were also in the top 5 in Maple. So he jumped 3 World Cups with 3 double clear rounds, and that was very good. And really, he was only my one horse that could do that level. Kamatsio was a younger horse. He was only 8 at the time. And Look at Me was really a fantastic meter 40, meter 45 horse, and on day X, meter 50. You know, I had to choose my class as well with Shiraz. And like I said, it wasn't a very long sort of career we had together. It was not even a year. So I find that we had good success in that time.
Now, were you full-time horses at that stage, or were you still running the cosmetics or the skin business?
No, I was still doing that. That was my sort of livelihood.
Now, why the big decision to go to Europe? What was the call? What was the allure of Europe? What was the goal, the plan, the ambition?
Well, I guess I was sort of flying high with my riding, and I felt that if there was ever an opportunity to do it, it was then. I had sort of at that stage 2 horses of my own, and I was able to sell them and use that capital to go over and reinvest in Europe. And I felt that it was something that I believed that I could do. I knew that I went to Germany, so English isn't widely spoken, particularly in the horse industry, and that alone posed a big challenge. And then the culture as well, getting used to the culture as being sort of an outsider. So that was tough, and I realized that going over. So I sort of prepared myself for it. I also prepared myself for the fact that this wasn't going to be a romantic story, as I was going over on my own dime, and I had to make a success of it from a financial point of view in order to keep myself over there. And I had a lot of support from Ian Callender Easby at the time, and right until the stage that I moved to the US. And we had 2 very nice horses together, and I was fortunate to get Carnival, the stallion, which Evie's riding now, as a horse to compete on in the beginning of my tenure. And so, from the get-go, it was all about getting over there and surviving. And was a lot of people have done it and tried it, and for many reasons have either returned or decided it wasn't for them. But for me, it wasn't really an option to come home, really. I wanted to see it through, and went through some real tough times, but the process was fantastic. And if I had to do it again, let me think about it. Yeah, I'd do it again.
So how old were you when 2013 rolled in and you thought, well, it's now or never? And given the challenges of Germany that you said that it is such a competitive environment that you would also have to learn German, which I obviously assumed you did and probably did pretty well and pretty quickly. But why Germany? Why the choice of Germany? I mean, given the language barrier, why not England or Ireland or somewhere where the culture would be a little bit the same or not too far removed from your South African roots?
Yeah, good question. So I was 32 when I went over, and my connection to Germany was purely from a standpoint of where I'd acquired my horses, and being passionate also about horse breeding and understanding the pedigrees of horses, we realized that it all started pretty much in Germany, and it is really the factory for producing, breeding top sport horses, jumping and dressage. So I wanted to be as close as possible to the source, that I had within close proximity places that I could source young horses to purchase and produce. In Ireland, not saying that you can't do it, for example, in the UK, it has changed a whole lot already now. You can't just hop on a flight and go over and look. But at the time, I felt that Germany was the place that I wanted to go. And I think at the end of the day, that was a really good place for me to be. And ultimately, I ended up still within Germany, but close to the Dutch border and to Belgium. And that opened me up to more exposure to clients and business from those 2 countries particularly. But I like Germany because it's very big, and one can often find sort of a hidden diamond. In Belgium and Holland, it's really quite small. Everybody knows everybody, and everybody knows every horse. Whereas in Germany, it's very vast and very, there's a good opportunity to sort of see horses that really haven't been under the microscope already in the smaller countries and those more commercial areas.
Now, you obviously went there with a plan and a goal. Your own personal goal being a rider is obviously to find that horse, to campaign and to make the big time. That's what you all want. But within that, there's the survival, there's the day-to-day survival, there's the whole generating an income to allow you to do that. So what was the plan, and how much preparation was there before you went over, i.e. what did the checklist involve before you got on that flight?
Oh, are you referring now to in terms of going to Germany or going to the US?
No, going to Germany. So you're in South Africa,
Okay.
You make this decision, what do I need to have in place? I need connections, I need a base, I need finance. When I get there, what the hell am I going to do? How am I going to earn an income?
Yeah, so the first thing first was to have finance in place. So that I managed to do with the sale of the 3 horses, Look at Me, Kamazio and Quality Touch, who are all 3 very good horses, already competing meter 50 and Quality Touch starting sort of to do the meter 40s. So I'd managed to sell those 3 horses and sort of get together some good capital to move over, to allow me to reinvest in new horses and to carry me for, a certain period of time. So I had that, and then at the time there was also opportunities to sell horses back to South Africa as well. So looked at that as well, and I guess my plan at the time was, like I said, I knew that a new person, arriving in a country like that, the likelihood, or let's back up a minute, to ride at that top level, you have to have the horse. You have to have money to have that horse. So the money's either got to come from yourself or you got to have a sponsor. And in my position, I didn't have a sponsor, and I wasn't going to, the money that I had, I wasn't prepared to put into one basket and buy one Grand Prix horse for myself. I realized that, okay, I had to reinvest this money and start building my business to the point that hopefully one day I'm able to have a horse that I can keep and compete on. And in fact, that takes me to the transition from Germany to the US. And last year in 2019, I was in a position with my business that I had accumulated enough capital, and I had 2 really, really good horses, the best that I've ever had, I would say, at the right ages. And at that point, it was again a time to decide, am I going to stay in Germany and carry on doing this the way I've been doing it, or am I going to take this opportunity and go to the US? And again, since I moved from South Africa to Germany, predominantly my business has been with selling horses to the US. So in that 6 years, I've developed contacts and clients and become, educated on the industry over here. And during that time, it's also intrigued me to the point that I've considered moving over there. Again, the culture, the language, it's an environment here which is very similar to South Africa, where it actually is based on call it a hobby as opposed to a commercial business, as it is really in Europe. So here we have a huge amateur market which is supporting the industry, and then supplying all the sponsorship and I'd say the large sponsorship which attracts the top professionals. So it's really an amazing industry over here, and very attractive for me for 2 reasons. 1, for competing again, and 2, for business. So to back up again, in July last year, we moved over, and I had 2 fantastic horses that I brought with me. I brought another 2 horses, which were, I call commercial horses, horses that were ready for the market to be sold when I got here. And again, that was part of the plan. As I went to Germany, we had to have a plan in place to sort of sponsor ourselves while we were here and support ourselves during the first year, let's say. And then obviously I started a lot with training, which I never used to do in Germany. It was purely producing horses, and that has been very lucrative as well for me over here.
I want to talk a lot about the US, but I'm going to go back to Germany if you don't mind, because a lot of people will watch these and have the idea, well, maybe there's a chance I could go over. Maybe we could just pick your brain as to what needs to be in place. So you obviously had a base in Germany, but did you have that set up from the get-go, or you didn't just arrive in Germany and go, now what? You had somewhere to go to. Was that a property that you'd bought? Was that, did Ian help you out? How did all that work? And then a little bit about your business. So you were predominantly finding horses, sourcing horses. You had a big pool of horses being Germany. As you said, many thousands are bred there. And your core business was finding the horses, producing and selling. And that's where you found the market in Germany. I mean, in America. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So, yes, when I started in Germany, I bought my horses from Hilmar Meyer. And that was actually where I started out for the first few months as a base. Once I had been there for, I think it was half a year or so, I then moved off and started on my own. And that was in the area near Bremen. And since then, I moved around to various parts, but Oldenburg, I was there. I was in Oldenburg for 2 years, which was very good. And then finally down in Westphalia, which was ultimately for me the nicest part, simply because you were closer to the clients that you'd find from Holland and Belgium. I definitely was never thinking of buying a farm. In fact, there was one stage that I thought about it, but in the end, because I knew that it was not going to be a real long-term thing for me to be based in a particular part of Germany. I never wanted to lock myself down by sort of buying into a farm. So it was very economical as well, and very easy just to go ahead and rent stalls, and you could take the time a little bit to see where you wanted to be, and it was to my advantage that I moved around a little bit and got to know a lot of people in different parts of Germany. I've also spent a lot of time down in south of Germany, and I have a good friend and partner in the south of Germany, which I own horses with, and due to that mobility, let's say, and not fixing myself to one place, I was able to meet different people and see different parts, and really sort of get the most out of it.
Mm. And when you went across, did you speak German, or did you have to learn on the go?
No, I had to learn on the go, and I'm still struggling with it. But it's good enough. It gets me by in my industry. But it's a tough language, and I'll say Roxy. When Roxy came over, and in the first 3 months, she literally was speaking fluently. She was writing up client reports and things like that in like high German. I then realized that some of us have it and some of us don't.
Yeah. She's always been a bit of an overachiever, that Roxy, though.
Yeah, no, so.
But now tell me, you mentioned, and this is what I found astounding, because in your line of business, so much of it would be networking, the ability to, at small shows, go and introduce yourself, have a chat to people, tell them about what you do, and establish those relationships, especially in a place like Germany, where I would imagine Germans stick by Germans. So how difficult was it to make those connections and to establish those relationships, those friendships, to get your business off the ground?
Well, actually, it wasn't that, I didn't find it that difficult. I found that a lot of people were very open and welcoming to me in that sense. I mean, let's be honest, I think that whenever you see, if you're in their shoes, whenever you see an opportunity to make some money, you know, you put a smile on and you see this person, and it's an opportunity in a good way. Not perhaps, I don't mean in a bad way, but it's business. There's opportunities to make some money. So at the end of the day, I found that, you know, the business was motivating the people to engage with me and that sort of thing, because I did come out and I was new. People always know the new person. I bought horses. I competed on horses and did well as well. But things were happening sort of around me, good and mostly good, I hope. I didn't find that too much of a problem at all. Just like in anything, you just have to go with your eyes open, and buying horses is very difficult for all sorts of reasons. They have personalities, and they change, and you know, one has to just be quite smart about that. And I guess that's always been sort of the biggest challenge, is finding those good horses without knowing so much about them. Seeing them at a show, you know, in the ring, but not knowing much about it, and, you know, going ahead and making a move to buy that horse. That I found more challenging. But getting in with getting to know people, I must say I found that not too difficult at all. That wasn't bad.
Do you think that a lot of the talking was done in the ring, that you have a talent on the horse, and if people saw you producing the horses the right way in the ring? Because I know that those German shows are very social, a lot of those evening shows where they have the pub and the smoking section on the side, and everybody hangs out there and they watch through the glass these horses jumping. Was a lot of your talking done in the ring?
Yeah, I guess you could say so. In the first year there, I had that horse I mentioned of Ian's, Carnival. We won a national Grand Prix on him, sort of quite soon into my time in Germany. And I had a horse which I bought, and then a lady, Rita Brink, soon owned after that, called Zalut. And he also won quite a prestigious national Grand Prix in East Germany. And yeah, various other nice successes. And I had some really nice young horses at the time as well, Carlotta and Qantas. Qantas is now in South Africa with Tamareda. And those horses were very successful in the young horse classes, often winning. So that definitely helped sort of my name in the community, let's say, in terms of riding at a higher level and you know, competing on really good young horses, which were then obviously very attractive for German dealers even, who had clients. So you started to interact with people. So again, it all comes down to the horse you're sitting on that helps you at the end of the day.
Mm. Now, you said by your own admission there were some tough times during that German spell. Do you want to elaborate what was tough? Loneliness, perhaps? Being away from Roxy? At what stage, Rox, did you come into the picture? When did you move over?
I moved over after graduation, so 2018. So we did a good almost 5 years in the various countries. So it was long enough.
Yeah, so some long-distance separation anxiety, I'm sure, would have been pretty tough. Other tough times, and was loneliness a factor?
Definitely was something, especially if you're a big family person and used to having, you know, a lot of friends and that sort of thing. From that standpoint, that was where it was a little more difficult to sort of get in with, you know, the German people, and not because they were German. You can find it here in America as well. People are busy in their lives, and you know, when they have that rare opportunity to just be with, you know, their partner or be with their family, they want to do that. So often, you know, the social gathering and whatnot was you know, not so easy to get into. So the tough parts, yeah, but you get kind of used to that. We were in a long distance relationship, but it felt quite close. We would speak, you know, often several times a day. We would visit just about every 2 weeks. I'd either go to Roxy, most of the time she'd come to me. So, you know, when I find that without that relationship, it would have been, sorry, the battery just went on our iPad. So I guess it would have been a whole lot harder if I didn't have that relationship with Roxy. So I definitely would say having that helped in that regard enormously. We always supported each other in that sense, and that certainly helped us. Other times, obviously, the weather, winters. Oh my goodness, going to shows at -4 degrees, riding 4-year-olds. Sorry, iPad just run out of juice here.
That's all right. You can plug it in quick.
We're going to turn it around here a second. Hold on.
Sorry.
That's all right.
I'll try and hold that. So, yeah, the cold winters were very, very challenging, particularly when you're taking 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds for their first time outing, and you're charging around small indoor warm-up rings with another 40 wild 4- and 5-year-olds. After a few years, I guess that's what got to me.
Were you doing the whole grooming thing as well, and the mucking out, or did you have staff to help?
I had grooms who worked for me, and for the most part, you know, 6 days out of 7, my grooms would be doing that. But they had to have off days, so day 7 was my day. And in the beginning, I remember at one stage I had 10 horses, so it was 10 stalls with straw, and straw is a lot more difficult than, or I should say, labor-intensive than shavings. Because you often have to clean out the whole stall, and 10 stalls worth of horse manure and wee and straw is quite telling on the body. And then, you know, you got to be blanketing in the winter, so it's often blankets on, blankets off, twice a day for the walker, for exercising, cleaning the stalls. It was very physical. So that you need to be prepared for, 100%.
That's when you time your 10-day routine at those weekends where Roxy's coming over. So 10 horses turns to 5 horses, I bet.
You got that right.
Yeah. Let's now, the move to America. You had clients in America, but Germany is still the hub. Europe is still the hub. That's where things are really happening. Or is it? Because that circuit in Wellington and that Sunshine Tour that they have, well, you tell me, how has the scene grown in Wellington? I mean, why besides the clients, the choice to move there?
Okay, well, like I was saying, in Germany, I was doing a lot of, it was pretty much my model was buy young horses, produce them. When they get to sort of 7, 8 years old, that's when they're at their highest point to sell and market. And so at that stage, I'd be selling the horses. I got to a point that I felt, do I want to be doing this for the rest of my working life? And I thought to myself, no, I don't want to be doing 4- and 5-year-olds, breaking them in. Actually, that work I didn't do, but you know, taking them to their first shows and dealing with all the baby antics that they get up to. and and then ultimately you get really some nice horses that you build up to 7 and 8 years old, getting excited about them, and then because of your model, you have to sell to pay and pay for the rest and start all over again. So last year I found myself in a position where I had accumulated sort of enough funding to support myself with 2 very good horses to come to the US, and then change my model to where I could compete again and hopefully attract people to train with me. And so I basically changed from what I was doing in Germany in terms of my model, going to the US with a completely different strategy. So it was get over, get in the ring, hopefully be successful, and try and attract some business in terms of people that I can train, because it's a very lucrative side of the business. And then obviously with people that you have in training, you also would sell horses to them as well. So that model appealed to me as something that I wanted to transition into, and that's why America was for me the ultimate place. And it really is. If you look and research, you will see that the best horses, the most expensive horses in volume are sold to the US. And they congregate in the winter at the Winter Equestrian Festival in Wellington. And that runs from November till middle of April. And it attracts people not only from all over the US, every state in the US, but from Canada, South America, Mexico, Europe itself. A lot of the top guys from Europe come over because of the prize money. You're literally looking at, for 12 weeks in a row, $500,000 worth of prize money up for grabs for the professionals per week.
Sure.
So it's.
Have you claimed some of that?
I've tried. I've tried. At WEF, I didn't actually compete as much as one would have thought, because I jumped a lot of the national shows leading up to WEF from July till
So what is
October.
WEF? What is WEF?
The Winter Equestrian Festival.
Okay.
So that's in Wellington.
Okay.
And
That's the 12-week, 500 grand a week.
That show runs for 6 months pretty much. Was it 5 months? November, December, January, February, March, April, 6 months. But there are 12 weeks of WEF, as they call it. So those run from the middle of January till the end of March. And those are the big money shows. But every single week, from the 1st of November till the middle of April, the show is running up to 1.50 meters on a national level. Every single week.
And it's obviously getting some big names coming from all over.
All the best. All the best guys in the world are over here, especially during those 12 weeks.
So also as a testing ground for where you're at and your abilities and your horse's abilities, it's great to get in, like they say, play against better competition, raise your game.
That's it. That's it.
It's
Going back
chasing
to
Derek King around there.
Going back to you obviously, when you came across from Germany, did you have backers? Because it's a big risk that you want to change your whole strategy from going from a production yard, buying in young horses, producing, selling. You're now, as you say, changing your strategy. You want to compete. You obviously want to compete with prize money. That takes good horses to do, but you've also got to keep the stable running while you're finding your feet. You're not producing and selling anymore. You need to get the clients to train. So did you have all of that lined up before you made the move? Or did you have backers who said, come, when you get here, we'll support you? What exactly those first couple months was in play?
Yes. So also, just to go back a minute, so during my time in Germany, I also had a lot of investment from my family and from a close friend of our family as well. they were pretty much silent partners in some of the horses that I had. And two of those horses came over with me to America. So we brought 4 over. 2 of those I had a half share in, and the other 2 I owned. And then in terms of American, I wouldn't say call them backers, but I had very good contacts here who helped me a lot with just some like local knowledge, what shows to go to, you know, what time of year, you know, what medical aid to use, you know, find a truck, get an address, all of that sort of thing. So I had a lot of help from those people, which I'm very grateful for. And then coming over again, still the model of selling horses is a big part of the new strategy. And since I've been here, I have sold 4 horses. 2 of the horses were the 2 that I had in partnership, and 1 I brokered a deal from Germany for one of my very good clients. And then I also sold a horse to one of my training clients, one of my horses from Germany that didn't come over with me. I still have 6 horses in Germany at this moment. So I have partners over there who are continuing with their production, and as they sort of come to the right stage, then we would either bring them over or bring clients over to Europe to try them. So I sold 4 horses. Unfortunately for me, probably my best horse to date that I've ever owned was a mare called And Action. She did amazingly well here. As an 8-year-old, she jumped in. No, she was 8. As an 8-year-old, so she was not exactly 8 yet, but at the beginning of this year, she was 8. And she started to step up to do small Grand Prix, sort of 140, 145 level. And she was second in 2 and won 1. And at that point, she attracted a lot of interest. What's that? Oh, yeah, I'm just the cable. And like I said, unfortunately for me, I had to sell her. She was, like I said, in a partnership, and after a lot of consideration, that was the decision we made. But very fortunate for her new owner, which she is an incredible horse. But again, the business was amazing that we did on her. So there was that. And then the other 3 horses, I also did well on. So in terms of the business side, it's going really well. And I still have Carlos, who is my go-to guy. I've owned him since he was 6. He's now 12. He's what's he? 11. He's 11. Sorry, he's 11. But he's been great. He's won 2 national Grand Prix since he's been over here. He's won a lot of prize money, and he's definitely keeping the boat afloat, I should say. I still have him, and I'll try to hold on to him. And my dream would be to find a sponsor over here who I could then have horses that don't have to be sold. Or, you know, and we'll see how my business evolves in terms of the training and the selling, like I mentioned, which is the big part of it, as to what I can hold on to for sport myself. But ultimately, it is best to have a sponsor so that it really takes that horse out of the equation for selling.
There's obviously a whole bunch of other things that go into it, the logistics. I would imagine, are you still traveling as much between Germany and the States?
Well, I've been 3 times. I've been 3 times since I've been in the US, all for business, to buy horses. I think if you think of the time that we've been here, during November to now, it's been very busy with shows, and people are not inclined to hop on a plane and go over. It normally happens sort of pre-season, September, October time, and then perhaps now May, June time. But with a COVID situation, that's been a big impact, or had a big impact on that. But I feel like I'm traveling enough. I tried not to be away too much because, again, now I have responsibilities to train people and also obviously keep my horses going. But what is nice is when we do decide to go, it's literally, a 4-day trip. We hop on the plane. I have the horses lined up in Europe ready to be tried. They're all sort of, call it, say, pre-vetted. So, we've looked at videos, we've analyzed everything. It's a matter of getting on, seeing if it's a fit for the rider, and then flying back. It's not a big safari that we go for sort of 10 days trying a whole bunch of horses.
Now, your wife is sitting on your right-hand side, so I know that you didn't find an American bride to secure a passport. So how did you sort yourself out? Because that's another big thing. It's not that easy just to get into the States and to start over there. There's a lot that goes into it, and they're pretty peculiar about who they allow in, especially from the Mexico side with that wall.
Yes, that is a big topic for us, and it's ongoing. But we were able to get in on an O visa, which is a 3-year sponsored visa. It's a visa called the O visa for individuals of extraordinary ability, and you have to prove that you are an individual at a high level in your industry. And I had to employ a lawyer over here, and an enormous amount of work with references and physical evidence of your successes and financial position and that sort of thing to be granted that visa. And we did get that. The nice thing about the visa is we have the ability now to apply for green cards, which is what we're in the process of doing at the moment. So our fingers are crossed that we are able to get that. If not, we have certainly 3 years here with an extension possibility as well. But we are hoping for the green card.
And while all that is pending, are you allowed to buy property? Have you bought property? Where are you based? How many stables? Do you live at the yard? Are the stables just outside, or do you have to travel? Are you renting?
Yes, so we're a little bit living a bit of a gypsy life at the moment. The last 6 months have been great down here in Wellington. It's allowed us to be stationary for a period of time, and we rent as we go. Again, it's still early days. We haven't been here a year yet, and we're just taking a little bit of time to identify our model for this industry, because it is very much around traveling. In the summer, you're traveling literally all over the northern part of the country to shows. So you have like the Northeast, which is a big community. And then, of course, you've got California to the west. And then you've got a sort of a scene in the central part in Kentucky. But across these zones, you have a lot of traveling that takes place to get to the various shows. So you're pretty much in the summer, always on the go. The winter, you have the ability to be a little bit more stationary, which is down here in Wellington. So we want to sort of see this first complete year through until July, because we arrived here in July last year. We didn't see much of the summer. We just caught the tail of it. So for now, we're just sort of finding our feet and trying to identify how we want to do it. And there's a whole bunch of options, whether to have a farm or not. That's a question. But I guess as we go through this experience, we're going to find the answer to that.
Where do you think you will As you said, you're allergic to cold weather. Now, Wellington is not too cold in the winter, isn't it? Quite a temperate climate.
It's fantastic in the winter, but it's brutal in the summer with heat and humidity.
Always a trade-off.
That's it. So I really think, and from learning from other people, we nearly think that our base we'll call in Florida. Now there's two parts to this. There's Wellington, and then there's Ocala as well. Ocala is a very interesting destination now with the new development that's going on there. It is really incredible. So one is to see how that turns out. It starts in January for its opening, and if anybody's interested in looking up sort of the most state-of-the-art equestrian facility of enormous magnitude, look up World Equestrian Center in Ocala. That's going to be, I think, quite a big changer of things down in the winter time here in America. So with that, I think we will want to base in Florida and then travel north for the summer. And we've seen a few people that do that. Again, it depends also on whether you have a farm or not, and the customers or the clients that you get involved with. It all sort of works together. But for now, it's looking a bit like Florida as a base, and then we travel north in the summertime.
In terms of your riding and your production, and I guess the overall scene in America, is it much different to here? Is it much different to Europe? I know that they have different types of classes, hunter classes, and different divisions. Have you had to learn a lot or relearn things that have made things that basically adapt to their way of going? And what have been the most striking differences between the systems here, Europe, and the States?
Well, I think at the end of the day, I find that our South African style of horsemanship, I want to say, is a very classical style, and it is still the best, I would say. I'm not saying South Africa, but that style of horsemanship where we take time with the production of the horses. We expose them to a lot of experiences in different shows, traveling them to different places for training, outriding, and also the simple, basic horse care fundamentals of, good hay, good food, real good old horse management, and not overcomplicating it. And I find that, in Germany, the next thing was obviously very good horsemen as well, but because of the commercial element to it, things are often rushed, and that I was also perhaps, I can't, is it charged enough? Yeah. Sorry, we're just having battery issues here again with our. So I was also probably a culprit to taking perhaps shortcuts, with the younger horses, and that was motivated due to the commercial pressure of getting things, getting horses to where they need to be to sell. So in Europe, you find that quite a lot. Horses are often can be a lot greener for what level they're jumping, and obviously a lot of very good riders sort of exploiting the horses to an extent because they're very capable of riding a green horse around a big track. And then, when the person buys the horse may need to go a couple levels down. So that element of the fast production in Europe was something that obviously stands out from the three different countries. The US then, first of all, really expensive to own a horse here. So not really from a business point of view, not a place to produce a horse. And that's why I still have sort of my production horses in Germany, as that makes a lot more sense. The American system, I find very attention to detail. They're not scared to spend money on making their horses feel better. They will inject, they will buy supplements, they will buy anything, beamer blankets, they'll pay farriers huge amounts of money to shoe their horses if that's what's needed. They'll do everything that they can for their horses, often too much, and often I find missing the basic fundamentals of thinking about how much jumping a horse actually should do, and also just trying to keep things a little bit simple, because that's ultimately how horses exist in nature. Good grass, water, good balanced food, and help them when they need it, and not to overdo stuff. So I think that's the major thing. And at the end of the day, maybe I'm a bit prejudiced, but in South Africa, I think we got that. Our horses had a good off season. We also didn't overdo medicating and all the things that go on with fancy shoeing and things like that you would find over here. And in the end, I found our horses lasted a lot longer. Though I must say, to understand from an American high-level rider, and not just an American, Europeans as well, these guys are fighting to be the best, and the horse is their partner in it, but they are not limited to one. So when they need to be in the ring, they will be in the ring, the vet, and they will do everything to get that horse in the ring. When that horse breaks down, they often have sponsors who replace the horse. And so this cycle goes. And so this culture evolves, where it's, get as much out of the horse in as short a time as possible, and so that it supports getting the ranking points, getting the successes that are needed to qualify for the big championships. So the horses are used a lot harder, and that is the reality of it. Whereas in South Africa, we don't really do that. We often own our horses ourselves, and we want to make that horse last as long as possible.
It sounds a bit brutal, but it's a good place for you to be, Roxy. You're well positioned.
That is true. That is true. It doesn't completely suit my approach, but I have to adapt. Clients have to adapt. So there's enough for everybody, There's different approaches, and there's definitely enough people and horses to go around.
Not a huge amount of longevity, it seems, for the horses. Tokkie, in terms of being a competition rider, how have you had to really raise your game? Do they just go hell for leather? It's no hold bars, there's good prize money, there's a lot on the line?
Absolutely. We, when we enter a Grand Prix, first of all, it's big entry fees. You often, to ride in that, let's call it a national Beta 50 Grand Prix, we're often looking at $1,000 for the entry. And that Grand Prix typically has about $25,000 to $70,000 for total prize money. 30% about goes to the winner. And you are contending against people that have, spent a lot of money buying horses in Europe and are very, very good riders. Sometimes you can get lucky and you'll find a Grand Prix that doesn't have more than 30 riders, but most of the time, certainly down here in Wellington, you'll have over 100 starters qualifying for 50 places in the Grand Prix. So you have to be pretty good from day one to qualify, so that you don't have to, overjump your horse before the Grand Prix. And with the amount of money that there is to win, when you enter the ring and it's not even a big Grand Prix in terms of what's available here. But when you walk into the ring and there's $70,000 in prize money, and you know what it costs to enter that class, you know what it costs to have this horse on a month-to-month basis.
You're not going for schooling rounds.
You need to get in there and go for it. And Carlos has been an amazing horse. He's fast, he's careful, he's got scope, and I've been very lucky to have him sort of put me on the map a little bit since we've been here.
You making a name for yourself, or are people sitting up and taking notice and want to know who you are, and perhaps the next step is the sponsors? How do you entice them? How do you grab them? What's the hook?
Well,
Golf.
actually, I play a lot of golf with a lot of the top riders. Love golf, and I guess I'm taking advantage of what I couldn't after university. So yeah, Roxy, and she
don't beat them too badly though. You got to give them a few holes. They got to like you. If you just keep beating them,
well,
there's got to be a strategy here as well.
Well, no. We do the same as in the ring, because they don't hold back when I'm in the ring. So when we're on the golf course, we we keep it business. But I've gotten I've gotten to know a lot of really well-established people here, riders and business people and trainers, and it's been partly to being in the ring and competing and having some success. It's also been knowing the right people. I have a very good friend who I first met in Germany. He's an ex-South African called Guy Hodgson, and he's been an unbelievable friend to me over the years, and he's helped me immensely with meeting people here. He knows everybody, and he's been really fantastic at helping me get to know the right people. And so it's been a whole bunch of things that have sort of gotten us to what we're doing. And if we look at it in terms of business has been, I'd say, really successful. And so far the sport, I've had, with those two horses that like everybody needs, we've had a chance to be very successful as well. So it's a matter of keeping the momentum going. And like I said to you, the dream is to connect with somebody who you can share a bit of a dream with, that they want to own a horse, you want to be part of that, so that you can have a horse that's good enough that you can look to have for several years and build a partnership with, and try and get as high up in the sport that we can. It all works together.
Is the dream for you, like any top class rider, the World Games, World Cups, Olympics, Nations Cups?
I try. A lot of people have their dreams and things, and I kind of take it one step at a time, and I look at my situation, and I think to myself, okay, well, if I can get to that next step, like we came from Germany, we are here now, we're doing that. If I can get to the stage where I can consistently have one or two horses that can jump in FEI Grand Prix, from 2-star to 5-star, wherever it might be, that's my next goal. Because without that, you can't go any further. So I'd like to achieve that, and we see how we do when we hopefully get to that point, and then from there look to the next step, and then see where we sort of end up. But there's nothing better for me than getting in to a jump off of a Grand Prix and being in contention. It is the ultimate feeling.
Now, obviously, it really helps to have the backing, and that is through sponsorships or owners. Where you are now, it's a very different kettle of fish to South Africa because it is a very successful professional sport. There's huge amounts of prize money, and I'd imagine that because of that, there's huge amounts of exposure should a sponsor come on board. So should a sponsor come on board, should somebody maybe be watching this and go, you know, there's scope for my company in a US state, or maybe we could do something with Johan. What can sponsors get? What is the bang for their buck? What sort of exposure are they getting?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to understand the culture around the sponsor in America. I don't believe are sort of, it's not often, in terms of horse ownership, when I say sponsorship, there's sponsorship for competition and sponsorship for riders and their horses. So those are two different kettles of fish altogether. The one which I'm referring to in terms of the sponsorship for the rider and the horse is in the US, usually somebody who just has an absolute deep down passion and love for a horse and wants to have a horse shown and competed at that level. And that's what they want out of it. And then you have your sponsorship of competitions, and you'll have, you know, all the top brands of riding apparel and horse supplements, tack, all of that sort of thing. So I think it's obvious what exposure they get through the advertising and the sponsorship that they do. So whereas the sponsorship that I'm referring to is, you know, it's a different angle. It's somebody who's, you know, not really looking for a financial benefit apart from maybe prize money, but normally that's not what they're in it for, because what you pay for a horse and what it costs you on a month-to-month basis, the prize money, sure, on the top level definitely helps that, but ultimately purchasing a horse for that level and maintaining its costs are not something that's done by prize money. So it's usually somebody who just has a deep passion, love for a horse, that wants to be part of that journey of competing at the high level.
But I would imagine that most events like this WEF event is live streamed, or there are broadcasts around it, or there's generally more exposure to the man sitting at home who wants to tune in, who can watch his horse go around, than we would find here.
Enormous, absolutely. Yeah, there's a live stream that goes, like I said, for 6 months of the international ring, where all your top competitions are going. So every horse gets filmed that goes through there. And, you know, there's a lot of publicity through the Facebook and Twitter accounts and things like that as well. So there's enormous exposure in that sense.
Also at the shows, the hospitality is unrivaled at these horse shows. You know, it's like they have big Saturday night light classes that bring in unhorsey people and crowds, and it's become a spectator sport, and it's a whole family event with just things, activities and VIPs and shopping and all of that. It's a whole carnival thing that runs for 12 weeks. It's huge.
Yeah. It's a business. It's a major business. Yeah. Final question. Through a lot of these chats, aspirant riders who have the talent, perhaps they have the financial means, but they don't have the know-how. We talk to them, we say, what do we have to do in terms of South Africa? How do we grow our sport? How do we field teams at things like equestrian games, which are not going to be also ran teams, that might get in there with a shout, that might have a competitive chance, whether they be individuals or as a team? How do we do that? How do we get to the point, to that point? And a lot of the feedback that comes back, well, our riders are good, but they don't have experience at that level, at these big shows, going at the pace that you guys are going at, in the competition, that their nerves don't get to them. And that comes with just getting in the ring in those competitions and doing it again and again and again. You will get better. So a person in your position who might in the next year or so find themselves with a base, would you be open to the idea, say somebody sitting back here and watching goes, you know what would be good for me as a rider? give me a fighting chance in years to come, is to go and get a horse, have it with Johan. He competes it. I go over from time to time, ride it. Maybe you have to downgrade a little bit and get the exposure at these shows. Is that a good idea? Would that be helpful to producing riders? They come back with that knowledge, bring it back here, and in so doing, we build up more experience. And it's a way of getting them in the ring.
Well, that's a good question. And honestly, if I have to be frank, I think our biggest obstacle is the quarantine coming out of South Africa. I think if one could
I'm saying they buy a horse with you, leave it with you.
No. But I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. No. That's why I'm sort of taking like a different angle on it.
Okay.
Because the cost of doing that over here and in Europe, and the practicality of, you know, we have a relationship with our horses and we ride them daily and that sort of thing. And at that level, you need to be doing that. So I think we have everything that we need in South Africa. There's enough competition. There are unbelievable horses that are being bred by the breeders in South Africa. What they've done for the sport is incredible. And I think really in the years to come, we're going to see some really outstanding horses. In my opinion, our riders just need the exposure in terms of riding more. So if we could have riders that would own or be able to ride not just one horse at that level, but have 2 or 3 horses to compete on in South Africa at the shows that you've got, just be in the ring more. Once they are able to come to Europe or to America, to take their horses with them and campaign, and they are definitely capable of doing that. And then that is that step that you're mentioning. And I think I don't know if you've spoken to Lisa Williams, but she would tell you absolutely. I mean, she had an incredible time in Europe and experienced that firsthand. And amazingly, she did in the time that she was over with Campbell. That sort of exposure for any of our top South African riders and their horses is what's needed to then compete on a level that would make us, you know, be able to compete at a world championship and get a team together. One has to compete and experience that. But we do have, I believe, the ability to produce that in our riders and our horses and in the shows that we have in South Africa. The only thing that's really hindering it is the quarantine. And to go back to what you're saying about, yes, having a base over here, of course, I'd be more than open to helping anybody who wanted to have a horse here and come over and ride it, or base here for, you know, the winter time, the 6 months, and compete. Absolutely. But I don't think that is something that they need to do in order to prepare themselves to ride at the top level. Sure, if they're already dominating in South Africa, as Lisa was doing, one then can do that, and it makes sense. But you go through a treacherous quarantine exercise, and which is very, very risky for the horses. I think that's, like I said, the biggest challenge. Once that's taken out of the equation, I think the opportunities are endless.
Well, hopefully there is some good news on that front, that we might see the quarantine regulations change in the not too distant future. Final question before I let you go. COVID-19, lockdowns, how are you guys coping? Are you affected? Do you see much of it when you go outside? I mean, these are tumultuous times, tricky times, especially in Trumpsville.
You go, I've been talking.
I mean, where we are right now is probably we've been the luckiest. You'll all have heard that the US got absolutely hammered, but it's been quite, I mean, it's a huge country. There's 330 million people here. So sure, the New York State, New Jersey states, all those northeastern states, they've had a tough time. It's been cold, they've been locked down. not as badly as South Africa, but they've been stay at home, things like that. We've been okay. There was a period over Easter where restaurants closed, but we've been able to continue going to the stables and riding. We've been able to have clients ride, some choose not to. Kind of the veterinary aspects kept going. So not much has changed. I think the benefit for us here is that these horses have had a break. And I think the riders have had a break. The guys are playing golf and the horses have had a break. So in the worst possible climate right now, I think we've been very fortunate. I think the horse industry in Europe's really suffered. And I think it's a real shame. And obviously what's happening in South Africa is awful. But I must say, I think we're raring to go, and we're actually going up to Chicago next Tuesday. The shows are starting again. We're actually going to a show tomorrow. So America's definitely trying to get back to some sort of normalcy. Whether or not that's the right thing, we don't know. But that's kind of where we stand at the moment.
Well, wish you all the very best. Last question before I let you, I keep saying that. But you are going to be a role model for a lot of young aspirant riders who have dreams of going overseas. You've done it. You took the plunge. It takes a brave man to do what you've done. You've obviously made some mistakes along the way. If you could change that, if you could, you've learned the hard way. So perhaps some sage advice for anybody who wants to follow in your footsteps, the do's and the don'ts.
Sure, mistakes. Wow, so many of those. But yes, I think first of all, you have to have a plan, and then also be open to adapting the plan that you have in your mind. And also, I think based on that plan, whether it might be that, for example, I came over and I knew that I had to make money first before I could follow a dream of competition riding, call it. But when I look back, there was also different ways about going about it. And I could have maybe done things a little bit differently, but I never have any regrets. When I make decisions at the time, we go with the facts that we have and, the ideas that we have. But I think when you're making your plan, really think outside the box, explore the different options, and really take time to do that. That when you come to decide on the route you're taking, that you've given that a lot of thought, and that you're making the best possible decision on your plan at the time. So that's the first thing. And once you've chosen that direction, really, go after it and not give up on it. But then also keep an open mind with things may take you in a different direction, which you didn't think about before. And don't...
I mean, you thought you were going to be a golfer.
Well, there you go.
You may still.
So basically just keep an open mind to opportunities. Don't have the blinkers on and just be completely, in one way, people are like, you've got to focus on what you want to do and have it really in your mind's eye and all of that. But at the same time, go in the direction, but look for opportunities that may be a quicker route to where you want to go, or end up being a better idea than you actually had originally. So to just sum it up, I think spend a bit of time, research what you want to do, and commit to it. And when the going gets tough, stick it out and keep your eyes open.
You seem like an incredibly determined, self-confident man, and I have absolutely no doubt that you will achieve everything that you put your mind to. We wish you the best of luck, although I think luck in your case is only going to be a small determining factor. So well done. You are an inspiration, and I thank you for the chat. I've enjoyed it a lot, guys. Keep safe. Keep your masks on no matter what your president tells you. Stay away from the hydroxychloroquine. Wash your hands, social distance. and keep safe.
Thank you very much,
so much,
Aidan.
Aidan.
Take care. Cheers, cheers.
Bye.
Bye.